it was loading.
All right, I'm gonna start the stream. I'm gonna go live.
So I go now?
Yes, here we go.
Yeah.
We're going live. We're going live. I'm gonna start Craig.
Can you hear me okay?
You sound beautiful. Yes. Fantastic.
Never send old people links that are unfamiliar.
Now recording.
Welcome to the Yang Roundtable. It is 2:17 p.m. Sunday, February 7th, 2021. We have Ariel, Faye Koo, Izzy, Mia, Refluence, myself, and our guest today is Reverend Wendy Hamilton for the second time on the show. Thank you so much for coming back. It is great to see you. You look in good spirits. We're all happy to be here. So, yeah, you've been here before. You know what the show's about. How are you doing?
Again, I'm doing much better now that I can see all of you and navigated all of the technology that I was telling Faye. I had her on the phone like, they're trying to make me go through all these verification steps. And, where you have to prove you're not a robot. They sent you like 8 things.
Oh, God.
You probably failed a couple.
And yet the robots still get through sometimes, right? You know?
But other than that, I had lunch. I'm doing great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
I'm good. I've not had lunch, but I'm still pretty good.
The Nerds for Humanity channel,
Yeah, I was asking Reverend Wendy what office she's running for because we are here to support her. And she said she's running for the U.S. House and as a delegate for Washington, D.C. specifically, because D.C. isn't part of a state. So they have their own delegate. But their delegate is different in that somehow you don't get a vote necessarily. Is that right?
Yeah, we can do everything but vote. So you'll see a lot around DC if you're ever here, and you'll see license plates that say taxation without representation, because we pay some of the highest taxes in the nation, and yet we don't have that representation. We have the delegate position, which I'm running for, which is one that can craft bills, that can go on record, that can put their voice on the floor. But when it comes to the actual vote, we cannot participate in the vote, which is, unconstitutional to me, because there are 700,000 residents here in the District of Columbia who feel unrepresented in that sense. We have no representation in the Senate, right? So when you're not a state, you don't have senator. We have shadow senators that are serving in that role temporarily. But when you look at states like Vermont and Wyoming, we have more population than both of those states, but no representation. And both of those states have, two senatorial representatives. So we're fighting to be heard. We're fighting to separate ourselves. Most times when people are talking about Washington in the news, they're talking about what happens on Pennsylvania Avenue and what happens on Capitol Hill. They're not talking about what happens over here on Georgia Avenue and what happens over here on Rhode Island Avenue. And so one of the motivations for me running was, please stop lumping us in, with that's just one small part. DC, the federal district, all of that's over there, that's in Ward 6. We have 8 beautifully vibrant wards of people here in Washington, D.C. who deserve to be heard and who deserve to have a voice. And so, didn't mean to go into parts of my stump speech early, but
not at all. No, yeah.
I traveled to D.C. It's like no one would talk about Foggy Bottom or something like that.
Right.
If not here for your stump speech, Reverend Wendy, where else?
Right.
That's what we're here for.
That's exactly right. And that's a thing I need to clarify, because it also speaks to why I was motivated to run in the first place. Like, that was a thought that came to mind this summer when I was thinking about just what was happening in our world. At that time, we did not know how the election was going to go. And quite honestly, I was like, I don't know if I personally would be able to endure another 4 years of what we just went through. I was like, I might have to move to Belize or something. And then you had like our civil rights leaders dying, like John Lewis and C.T. Vivian and others, and all of the progress that they've been able to make around civil rights and voting rights. You have an administration that's like hostile to all of that and trying to roll all that back. So I'm sitting at my kitchen table this summer and I'm like, And I felt, sort of a spiritual sense for me, like God was like, so are you going to tuck tail and run? You going to stand up and fight? I was like, well, you know me, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight. But running as a DC delegate would mean that I could do all of this work and not necessarily get to vote on it. So do I really want to do that? Because running for office is, it upends your life. It is something that you have to be committed to. It's not something you wake up and say, I think I'm gonna run for office today. Andrew would often say that. He was like, I didn't wake up one morning and say, I want to be the president of the United States. I'm not insane. But he felt a larger duty. He felt a call. And I too felt the same. Like, well, even if I can't vote, I can bring my passion to the table to further articulate why that is unfortunate that we don't have that voice. But I can also put my voice in on other legislation to make sure that DC is represented and DC is heard and that our interests are being considered. All the other states that have representation, the New Jersey delegation and the Texas delegation. Well, DC's in the House too, and so I felt like I wanted to bring that sort of authentic representation based on my connection here. Although I was born in Ohio and I lived there for most of my childhood, I came here to DC at 17 years old to go to Howard University. This is my adult home. This is where I've been for the last 20 years. And so I am
choice. Howard University is a very what do you call it, very political school because of its location, partly probably. But would you say that you gained a education in politics there?
Let's say I gained an education in activism there. You have to do politics, but politics is local. Politics was even campus wide. In 1989, when I was there I guess I was a sophomore or junior by then, and there was some political things happening on the campus. And I don't know if you guys remember David Duke, was he had run for a particular office and he was trying to come on the campus and speak. We shut it down. Like, oh no, we had some differences of opinion with the administration at the college. And so, we staged a protest on the college, took over the administration building, had demanded a sit-in and things like that. So what Howard did for me was spark that spirit of activism, of being engaged and participating. I never had that before. Coming here was like a culture shock coming from small town Ohio. I was like, do what? I hadn't seen this many people of color. I hadn't seen this many empowered people of color. And so I wanted to do it all. I went from little country bumpkin to Sister Soldier. I was like, yeah, where's the revolution? And my mom was like,
So that's how you ended up getting connected eventually to our group through the Yang Gang and the supporting Andrew Yang through his political run. And now you've been inspired to do your own political campaign. Now, for a lot of people don't know national, the DC area very well because we think of it, like you said, as the Capitol Hill and just, policymakers and media circus around that and all this. But the city itself is really interesting and very unique and has, for example, for me, when I lived in Reston, Virginia, the thing I thought was really great about Washington, D.C. is that all the museums are free. They're considered the national treasures of our country, but there they are, only in Washington, D.C. So you have to actually travel there from California or Hawaii or Alaska or someplace really far away to go and access these free resources that people who live in D.C. area can access every day. Every weekend, you can go with your parents to the free zoo, to the free national, all sorts of museums out there. Isn't that true?
Yeah. So our museum system is a part of the Smithsonian collection. And so any of the museums that we have here that are part of the Smithsonian family are absolutely free because they're considered historical sites and access for anyone. So everything from the recently completed National Museum of African American History, which is phenomenal to see. You can go in the Library of Congress for free. You can go in the National Air and Space Museum, which is one of my favorites, and see all of the creations in space. There's a national American Indian Museum, the Holocaust Museum, all of them are free of charge. So when you come, you have to plan to stay, and none of them can you go through in a day. So please understand that, if you're going to come, to plan and give yourself enough time to appreciate the National History Museum, the National Museum of American History, of Women's History, the National Gallery of Art. I mean, I could go on and on about all of the resources that are here and that are available, at residents' disposal, but certainly at visitors' disposal. And we're proud of all of those things. But guess what? Again, those are all sort of concentrated downtown in Ward 6. There's so much culture. If you just come about 3 miles north, there's so much more culture and museums to see. I did my official campaign launch last weekend at Lincoln Park here. And there's a beautiful statue of Mary McLeod Bethune, who was a historical African-American educator. And so all throughout, there's pictures, statues of Gandhi, and there's murals. And then all of the embassies are here, all the international embassies. They do tours. They even do a trick-or-treat night on, around Halloween, where you can go from embassy to embassy and get different types of international candies and stuff like that.
I think
international candy, I'm in. This is where we're going for Halloween. If I can travel over there some year when there's no pandemic, I am so going to do this.
Right.
I remember.
And I'll pitch in here. This is Kai, and welcome, Reverend.
Hi.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm so glad to see you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm glad to
I'm
see you.
sorry you can't see my living face right now. I'm on low bandwidth today.
No
So
problem.
we had a storm come through last night. Our internet in the house is down.
Okay.
So I'm using my mobile. That being said, I'm so happy to see you. And I was boots on the ground for a solid month in DC in 2019. So it was before the pandemic happened. And here's one of the things I really noticed about the people in DC, about DC metro area kind of collectively, and also kind of not collectively, is that DC suffers from many of the same problems that states that have major metropolitan areas that cross state lines have, which is that there are some fundamental issues with infrastructure, taxation, schooling, and everything else are complicated by the fact, A, DC isn't a state, and it's also complicated by the fact that you have the actual District of Columbia, but then you have Virginia and Maryland and Delaware, and they're all feeding into and taking from that local economy because of the proximity of and how even Baltimore, is part of that as people got priced out of DC area, we're forced then to go into Baltimore. And now Baltimore is one of the worst places for social justice issues, one of the worst places for criminal justice issues in the whole nation. And it's because of that fractionated way of governance, where instead of using sensible kind of bioregions or eco-regions, economic regions to divide positions of power, we're going on old property line rules. And in a 21st century, that sort of thinking isn't going to work for a place like DC, because even though you might be just under 1 million in DC proper, population wise, the outlying area is gigantic. And so
the metropolitan area is huge. Yes.
The other comment I'm going to say is DC proper also is probably the second largest city in the nation with a homeless population. So DC houses something like a quarter of all homeless counted in the United States, in DC proper. And that was my experience while I was on the ground, because I ended up being technically unhoused for the majority of my time there, which was mid-March into April. So it wasn't the most seasonable time either, although it ended up being beautiful and I lucked out. But I will note this too, that because of the free monuments, because of the museums and everything else, because all year round there's a comfortable environment that you can go to and not suffer from the elements. That's one of the reasons why DC has such a large homeless population. And then all of those people end up being unrepresented. So here you see the direct impact of poverty and where it forces people to go for solutions, but then that those people become immediately disenfranchised because DC proper doesn't have the vote, which is, and I'll voice my support of the DC Greens, which is they're actually Green Statehood Party. That has been their platform for as long as I've been aware of the DC Greens. And so that I know is something too. I'm curious about your opinion. Are you behind the statehood movement? I'm going to guess you are, but I'm not going to speak for you. I'm handing the mic back.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for making all of those important points. And, there were several places I wanted to piggyback. And when you talk about the homeless population and the unhoused, I wanted to also point out that the majority of those are veterans. And so that, adds an additional layer to me to the sort of connection and connected outrage we should all be feeling when we think about
the level of responsibility that we should have for them. Yes.
Right.
For them. Yeah.
And so, yes, to all of that. I am familiar with the Green Party. And Will Cox, I believe, is someone who's local here in the DC Green Party. I am absolutely for statehood. And I will say this, that it is an issue that is not just a DC issue, but it's really of national importance. And a lot of people got a chance to see up close and personal what one of the major impacts of not being a state can do and can have on the residents of DC. If you noticed on January 6th, there was a little bit of a delay in National Guard protection being approved and authorized to come down and protect the United States Capitol. We in DC, our mayor has to petition the government and has to ask the government for permission to be able to authorize the National Guard to come in and protect our city and our residents. She put in a request 3 days before January, on January 3rd, that was denied by the administration at the time. And then on the day of, when it became clear that we needed coverage, she still was not getting callbacks. There was, confusion. The Secretary of the Army eventually gave the okay for it to do, but they were instructed not to use force, not to use, so it was just, you mean to tell me that our governor, our mayor can't even make a call on her own to request coverage and safety, issues for our own residents? We have to ask the government, is it okay if we call the National Guard and have them come down and protect? Even, just that alone was just kind of preposterous and really brought the issue back up into the, forefront of everyone's mind. So I am for statehood, absolutely. But let me add something to the statehood message, because one thing you'll see is that most folks who are running for office in DC, you almost have to talk about statehood and nothing else. It's kind of like, because everything else that we want to do and be is kind of contingent upon statehood. And so that's mostly what people talk about. I want to talk about that, but I also believe that we're closer than ever, and I'll get back to that, but that we also need to be talking about statehood and beyond. Like, what's our plan once we become an actual state? Once we are given what we've asked for, what kind of policies need to be at the forefront that your representative would then become, be advocating for? Do we want, universal health care? Do we want universal basic income? What do we want to be? You don't wait till you get something to then articulate what you want that something to be. You go at it from the standpoint of, we have it, it's going to be ours, and here is what we want fought for. Here's what we want represented. Here is what we want said on our behalf once statehood is achieved. Now, that being said, we're closer than ever. The House just passed for the first time a statehood bill in June of last year, June of 2020. So for all of these years that we've been endeavoring to get statehood, the House passed it in June. And I I will, give respect to Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is the current delegate. She has, been the person who has championed and written the statehood bills and gotten it through the House. And a lot of people say, Wendy, you're running against Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's been in the position now for 30 years. She is my elder. I have a lot of respect for her. I have nothing bad to say about Eleanor Holmes Norton, but I'm not running against Eleanor Holmes Norton. I'm running for DC. You understand what I'm saying? I'm running for the issues, for the residents, for the vision that DC wants to have moving forward. And so that's where my focus is. But let me say that once she got the bill passed on the House floor, which was phenomenal, Mitch McConnell's Senate said it was dead on arrival, because they have decided that DC cannot have 2 additional senators, because that's going to tip the balance, of the Senate. It will give us 2 additional, blue Senate seats. And it used to be they would say, well, DC's not mature enough, or they're mismanaged, and they can't handle taking care of themselves and governing themselves in their own. But then it just became, then Mitch McConnell started just speaking the quiet part out loud. No, it has nothing to do with that.
I almost appreciate that he's at least open about what a caddy is. He's like, nah, it's for political reasons. We're not going to do it. Okay, at least he's telling the truth now. I mean,
so
I've been to DC about for 4 days. And it's so nice to see how vibrant that the city has stuff to do, stuff to see, stuff to explore. And I think that so many cities in America need that, because these young people are bored. They don't have a museum. They don't have a sense of community. It's all just big box store after retailer, after mall, after big box store. Where's the culture? Where's the heritage? Where's this? And we need that all over the United States,
Oh, yes, we do.
Even when you do have a museum. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I am just wondering, how likely do you think it is that when it comes up next time to the floor, that it will actually pass and that statehood will happen, now that Democrats do have a slim majority? And what can you do to help push that and make that happen when you enter your new position?
Thank you, Mia. How you doing today, by the way?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to see you.
Good, great. So you asked about 3 questions in there, and I'm going to try to answer them for you. The first one was, do you think, how possible do you think it is passing the House again? I do think it's possible to pass the House again. And then you said, what about the Senate now that the Senate has changed over? So I do think that we can get a lot of Senate support. Here is the roadblock, if you will, because even though the Senate has changed hands, we still have yet to have any Republican senators go on record to say that they would support statehood in any way, shape, or form. Which means if that remained, then the only way we're going to get statehood passed is by abolishing the filibuster and being able to vote it across in a simple majority, right? But that also, a simple majority requires holding on to all 50 Democratic senators, and then, of course, VP Kamala Harris coming in. And so far, Senator Tom Carper, who's Senator Democratic out of Delaware, introduced the DC Senate statehood bill last week. And so far, he's got 39 senators on it. He may have more since that time. But there's even a couple of Democratic senators, Joe Manchin and Sinema, who have wavered a little bit on whether or not to actually sign on, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that leads me to sort of your third question, Mia, was, what would I do to help bring it along. You know, in a perfect world, I would love for it to be a bipartisan vote, because this is not about politics. It's about humanity. It's about representing people's human rights. It doesn't have it doesn't have to be political to give people the right to govern themselves. It has become political in this environment. And so, you know, in a perfect world, we'd have 50 Democratic senators, 10 Republicans, and it could go to a vote, and you know, we could go on with the business of the country. So in a perfect world, I would love to be able to have this conversation and make the bill as bipartisan as possible, you know, and so that's something I would endeavor to start, Mia, because I do feel like having a Democratic Senate, and if we can increase our margins, that would even be better. But until we get to 60 Democratic senators, or until we get to a consensus around abolishing the filibuster, which there is not one on either side of the aisle, because it could always come back to bite you in the bud, right? Mm-hmm. That we have to figure this thing out. Somebody's going to have to give somewhere in order for this to truly become what it needs to be. And there is a lot of activism and a lot of voices happening here. You know, in the district around statehood, 51 for 51 and DC vote and statehood, and everybody is passionate. And 86% of DC residents want statehood. But what I'm finding is that if you are going to make this bipartisan, if it's possible, we are going to have to communicate to the other side in a language that they understand, and you know, and that they can, that is palatable to that conversation. And it may not has not been, you just need to do the right thing on the behalf of DC residents, you know?
And that's the unusual thing, right? Because you do have 86%. That means that a majority of Republicans then support it too, of the population. It's the leadership that is specifically objecting to statehood.
Exactly. Which is, and that's the message that I want to also elevate, because I don't think it's kind of like what we're going through with the stimulus thing back and forth right now with Joe Biden. Is like, well, maybe let me adjust it and try to get some Republican support or whatever. And it's like, Joe, I saw a poll this morning that said 9 out of 10 Americans support a COVID relief package. When have 9 out of 10 Americans been on the side of anything? Some things you can just go for. You know what I'm saying? You got the support or what have you of the American people, because some of these calculations are being made about whether or not to do something because they don't want to turn off a particular set of voters or things like that. But when you've got 86% of DC residents that are for it, I don't see the downside, right?
Well, that's the bipartisan aspect. Is sometimes you see, it must be bipartisan if it's 80-something% of Americans, and because some of those people are Republicans, but you just can't get the actual representatives to do the right things.
Right.
They're not interested in doing the thing. They're interested in political expedience, very clearly. You know, it's like, what do you do? If I were in your position, Reverend Wendy, there's just like no way I could keep pretending to have good faith in those people. I can be like, gosh, what a coincidence that you think that even though 86% of the people would like to be a state, you don't think that they think the people of DC are just too gosh darn silly to govern themselves. It's just a coincidence that would also be very politically expedient for you Republicans. Really what do you do? We have such a bad system.
Is rooted too in our founding, in that one of the reasons that it was restricted initially was because nobody lived in DC like now.
Right.
The only people that were in DC were there for business, and the residences were temporary or meant to be temporary. But then there were all the disenfranchised people that were slaves under that system for a long time, and were suppressed from the vote for centuries. And I think that the bipartisan nature of the stimulus and UBI really speaks to true conservatives. When I say government conservatives, in the classical sense, a classical conservative, it appeals to many conservatives as well, simply because it's fiscally responsible. Because because means testing is the greatest expenditure of our government in the welfare aspect.
Right.
So, you know, once you remove all the barriers, then people just do better. And
Right.
every UBI study that we've seen supports the notion that even something as small as a $500 stimulus once a year for a family helps lift them out of the most abject conditions. And of
And
course, we're aiming for something much higher than that.
We've got at least 2 organizations I'm working with here in DC right now, the DC UBI Coalition, Mothers Outreach Network, and also the East of the River Thrive, who have piloted UBI, projects of that amount, giving $500 a month directly, into the hands. They're targeting, particular populations, but the city itself is open to the idea of a UBI. And so what part of my message is obtaining statehood would allow us to entertain this for the entire state. And we wouldn't just have to be doing these piecemeal, projects and pilots in other parts of the city. Now, let me say this. One of the reasons why I also decided that it was prudent to get in the race is because I also got the sense in doing my research, I have a great team, of policy folks and political researchers digging around into some of the history of the voting habits and behaviors. 2022 is a midterm, and we all know that turnout tends to drop off during midterm elections. It just does. If there's no presidential race going on, it's a little harder sometimes for them to come out, and unless there's some hot topic or issue on the ballot, right? And so the last primary that we had, the last midterm here in DC back in 2018, not 2020, but 2018, out of the 593,000 eligible voting age residents of DC, because remember, we have a little over 700,000 in our population, but a lot of those are children. So of that 593,000, give or take a few, were registered eligible voters. You know how many voted in the last midterm? 89,000. It was 18.6% turnout. Like, that is unconscionable to me. Like, that is for a city like this, and and with the issues and things. But what I found is because people have become disillusioned with the process. They don't really feel like there's anything, igniting them, inspiring them to really come out, because, everything is statehood. And they kind of feel like, well, if we're not a state yet, like, what's the point? Like, what's the point? Until we get statehood, we don't really have anything to vote for. And I know that's not true. I'm just saying that's some of the perception I'm getting of residents when I'm talking to them on the ground. And so there's a sort of a dearth of hope, it's sort of hopeless. And so I'm saying to them, let's start envisioning the future beyond statehood. Let's not just give up and wait till it happens. Let's keep fighting for it. So then we can start talking about things and bringing in new ideas and things to the conversation once statehood is achieved. But please don't turn off and tune out until we get that. We still need you involved. We still need you engaged. We still need you coming out. But I'm getting back from the voters. Give us a reason.
They're voting the vote of apathy at this moment. So Izzy had a question. I think he had his hand up for a minute. You ready?
The thing I don't comprehend is the fact that we're still arguing about DC becoming a state. I believe that's what statehood means. And
Right.
isn't like Congress and the White House is based in DC, and it's like a lot of the laws or whatever taking place in DC, and all the sort of activity that we know now happens in DC. So for it to not be a state, but it doesn't make any sense. And by the way, Rev, I will say that the real fight is with the oligarch, because I'm not I'm sure you might have heard about the that one stint between, well, or maybe just a continuous issue with the continuous event with between online redditors and these hedge funds, who are part of the oligarch,
Mhm.
and are the strong, or the top guys in the stock market. And these
Mhm.
redditors, like they pumped a whole bunch of shares, whole bunch of money into the market. And and especially in like GameStop and AMC, that these top guys were trying to screw over. And it was all for opportunity, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and places like AMC and GameStop are you know are at threat of losing their business. And these these corporate a-holes, they try to bet on it to fail and stuff. And then when um when these online redditors, who I believe is like a representation of what Unity truly is, they
Mhm.
came together and they say, you know what, we're going to pump a whole bunch of shares into these companies, and
Mhm.
we're going to like make these corporate guys lose a whole lot of money and stuff. And then just watch like how they're like, they turn to like these big crybabies and stuff. But then at the same time, they own everything. They run the whole show and stuff. So the best way to make an impact is to have those sorts of movements, and hit them where it hurts, where it's like it's their wallet, and actually get a taste of like what we've been experiencing for essentially a century. and
Mhm.
and it's like, and it's just like, these you know these individuals, these a-holes can't just get away with it and stuff. But I do also want to ask, like, what other benefits can making DC a state can bring.
Well, I mean, what I'll really say, and everything that you talked about, and I'm not big into the stock market, but I certainly enjoy watching what was happening and watching the people fight back. And I even posted something. I said, anytime the people take power away from the powerful is progress. You know what I'm saying? And so at the end of the day, yeah, it's about who controls, and makes decisions for all of us. And so it was the ultimate power struggle, really, to see that, and to see them get hurt in their pockets and panic. I thought that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so that being said, DC becoming a state places more power back in the hands of its residents, right? And back in the hands of the people, and gives us more of a voice and a say so on what, how budget funds are allocated. I mean, again, because we don't have, a vote on certain things, when the COVID relief funds for different states was allocated early on in the pandemic, we got shorted, because they split it among all of the other states based on their needs and based on their outbreaks and stuff like that. And we got the leftover dollars, so again, it's about the more you empower a people to represent themselves, the less you lessen the power of those who would want to control them. And
I
so
think the bottom I think the bottom line is that, um, and I mean, there are like societies that have way less resources compared to us, like the
Mhm.
US or Canada, UK and stuff. And yet, when it comes to, like, let's say UBI or whatever, or giving everybody healthcare and stuff, for some reason, these people who are the lawmakers, they're complaining about how costly it is and stuff, when there are societies with way less resources that are able to do those things to take care of their own and stuff. And and I'm like asking, like, how's that even possible? But then but then I hear that they don't have an oligarch. That's the big thing. They don't have these liars, these manipulators, these narcissists who are controlling everything. And I mean, and I feel like one of the things that really, like, just push corruption like full force into our lives, and into at the top, whatever, is us being so lenient and nonchalant about these people when they do these things, or say, or make excuse for them, saying, oh, we all make mistakes, they're only human. And it's like, and then when they give like a measly sorry, we just believe them or whatever. And they just keep on doing the same exact thing. So there's no accountability. They're not like, because in these other smaller societies, or societies with smaller resources, they actually punish liars. They serve consequences. There's no exceptions. But here there seem to be are. I mean, that is why a lot of other toxic people, gravitate to societies like ours, because there's no accountability. No one's like really sticking it to them, so they could just run amok and do whatever they want. And like, even if we come together and try to, like, give them the taste of their own medicine, it doesn't go very far, because we're still a very small group, and they have tons and tons and tons of power. you know and even despite them being such a technically a minority, it's like they just have um so much control over everything and stuff, when that should never be
They're
the case.
Yeah, so we're actually many and they are few, but they have somehow monopolized a lot of the power.
Well, let me also say this though too, and I hear what you're saying, Izzy. I certainly, and I hear your pain and I hear your concern, but we also have to think about some of what you've described has nothing to do with the resources and everything to do with character and everything to do with the type of individual. Money doesn't make you who you are; it reveals who you are. And so I think that to the level and degree and the amount of monies that are available to us, it when we see how it's used and manipulated, it really is just showing us sort of a reflection of the people who are actually in charge of making those decisions. Yes, there are other countries who have less resources than us, but that are hold their corrupt politicians accountable and stuff like that. But you know what? That's because they have compassionate leaders who have levels of conviction, who have a priority for taking care of their citizens. And I'm not saying we don't
and
have that, we espouse that, but
and they listen to the people.
it doesn't necessarily play itself out in how we are set up, and we keep getting that revealed to us time and time again. So then it becomes on us in a certain, to a certain degree, to decide what we are going to do to hold these folks accountable. Are we going to continue to elect people who show no compassion, who are narcissistic, who claim one thing and then do another? So many people in Washington, and I'm not talking about DC, I'm talking about Washington, who can get away with these things because they're not held accountable. They get voted back in over and over again. They get nominated again over and over again. So that's where I started talking about the collectivity of people power that needs to come together, and folks need to, be responsible. Although you can't hold somebody responsible too. Let me say this and I'll finish up. You also can't hold somebody accountable who has no shame, who has who's not moved by consequence and things like that. So it's kind of a catch-22, but it starts with us, and it starts with us standing up and saying, we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to continue to let you push us around. I think that's what the Redditors did. I think that's what we did, at the voting box this year. We finally found ourselves, and we pushed and we said, we're not going to take it. Yeah, they pushed back, but that's okay because a precedence was set, and they know that. You understand what I'm saying? They know that, something that they thought that they couldn't allow people to control or to manipulate got manipulated. And they also know that those people are smarter and more dedicated and have a level of conviction that they do not possess. And it started showing them. Like I said, I didn't really pay too much attention, but like this whole Robin Hood app and how they set themselves up to be, we all know Robin Hood is supposed to take from the rich and give to the poor, right? When this whole thing broke off, Robin Hood got exposed. You know what I'm saying?
It was actually the sheriff of Nottingham.
Right. And so
yeah.
And so what happened?
I mean, you actually have a point with like
accounts, and they started moving, to other apps. And so we have no control over somebody getting out there and misrepresenting themselves. But when we find the misrepresentation, then we have the power to do something about what we have been presented and what we see.
That's great.
I would
you
like
hit the I'm just saying, like, you hit the nail on the head there when about like, especially when you said like when you put money to people's hands, it's like it doesn't like make them automatically corrupt. It just reveals like who they truly are. So like basically saying like, okay, depending on like how you use that money. I mean, not to say that like, if you spend it on whatever doesn't make you a bad person, whatever, but it's like how you utilize it, especially if you're in a top position and you have billions of dollars, maybe even more than that, and it's like for instance, like I mentioned about one of those societies that have less resources. There's the French up in Quebec that need like a whole bunch of like assistance from like especially like from the Germans and stuff. But if they had the resources compared to like the English part of Canada or here, they would get a lot of stuff done. As a matter of fact, I was told that they're actually starting to get to that point, and they're just now they're actually ran out of like vaccines because they used it all. And like and the things they complain about how they spend a lot of money, but it's because they're spending it on the people. Giving them those proper resources and stuff, and meanwhile we're the ones complaining, and it's embarrassing. So yeah, we should bring power to the people and stuff, and yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Izzy, but I wanted to bring the conversation back towards, we had been talking a little bit about how federal politics can benefit DC in terms of talking about statehood. But then Reverend Wendy made a really good point that the statehood problem seems to be the end all for a lot of people once they start talking about DC politics, but it isn't. It's really just a small piece of what needs to be done on a federal level.
To chime in just
Lots
a
of
quick
things that could
second
benefit DC.
about
And hold on, I'm sorry. I would like to let Reverend Wendy talk to us about the different policies that she would be running on. What are your top five priorities, for example? Statehood might be one of them, but I'm not sure if it is.
Well, it is from the standpoint of I'm running for an office in DC. So it's, you kind of have to default. But at the same time, the policies that are, top of mind for me are contingent upon statehood, to a certain degree, right? And so they all kind of tie in there together. And of course, I invite everybody to visit my website, revwendyforcongress.com, and you can, take a look. But of course, universal basic income is top of the line for me, just because I also know that it would benefit directly the residents of the community, and that's something that people can get excited about, right? When you start talking about, that's what excited me about Andrew Yang's campaign. It was like when I read about him that he wanted to do something tangible. It wasn't just one of these rhetorical, oh, we're going to get you $15 an hour, when all those things are good, but all those things are kind of, you couldn't put your mind really around how that would impact me directly. But if you're telling me you're going to put $1,000 a month in my hand, that's something tangible that I can kind of, attach my hopes to. So universal basic income, if we want that, if we want universal health care, criminal justice reform. Now, let me say that's one of my top five. So UBI, universal health care, criminal justice reform, and a lot of that, my approach and my thinking around criminal justice reform is not even about so much defunding the police as it is about reallocating police budgets in order to build stronger partnerships with some of the other community organizations to kind of lessen some of the, the brutality and issues that we're experiencing. For instance, there are a number of calls that come into 911 that social workers and chaplains can be dispatched to, and professional organizations that they can be serve as everything does not require a law enforcement response. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so there have been localities around who have done it. They brought on staff, part-time social workers. And so you get a call and the social worker can take that over, and you may not even need to dispatch a unit out there to see what's going on, where it doesn't have to escalate into something that ultimately becomes violent. And I'll say this too, and I'm not, trying to be controversial, but it is what it is. I also, was talking a lot about we need more de-escalation training. We need more, teaching, helping police officers to not feel like they have to respond
100%
all the time.
Is that controversial?
Yeah.
Here's why it's controversial for me to say it, because I still believe that that's possible. But then I look at what happened on January 6th, and I looked at people rioting and coming toward people and smashing them in doors, and nobody got what they found restraint somewhere.
Yeah.
They were able to de-escalate
Yeah.
those situations in a sense that they let their own fellow officers get killed. So
Yeah.
help me understand how you were able to restrain from shooting anybody at all, essentially, aside from the one young lady in the Capitol who was trying to come through a door and climb onto the floor. But how with the number of police who were on site did not one brutality case take place? No pepper spray was sprayed. So is de-escalation really what we need?
It just may not be a training issue. It may just not be a training issue. It may be something else. Maybe something else.
Yeah. So I'm for that. I'm for us being honest and having conversations around what that thing is right there. So criminal justice reform, education. Education. I'll finish. Let me do my 5, and whoever wants to talk. Education reform. I have a day job in DC public schools. I love DC public schools. I worked with the school system here for over 7 years. That has given me a unique look into the lives of DC families, because what I do is I work as a truancy and attendance officer. So I work with families whose students are truant, or families who have obstacles that prevent them from sending their kids to school on a regular basis. So those families might be experiencing homelessness. They might be experiencing domestic violence, and they've had to move across the city, and their students can't come in. So we're made up of 8 wards. Like I said earlier, DC is like 8 wards or 8 districts. Each of those 8 districts have 100,000, residents in them. And so I spend my time with students and families from all of those wards, because I have kids representing all wards coming into my school. But I also have learned a lot about the educational opportunities and the need for expansion of those in DC, because a lot of kids, and speaking from my experience here, just aren't college interested, and everybody doesn't have to go to college.
100%.
We need to expand vocational training and bring back the trade schools and bring back technical training schools. I've got an education policy guy working on that for me now, because I have kids who they're not traditional learners. They're not interested in sitting and learning algebra and going through that. But if they can stimulate and do something with their hands, Congressman Jim Clyburn from South Carolina, he said one time in a speech I was listening to, he said, every doctor is going to need a plumber and every lawyer is going to need a mechanic. So, we need to reintroduce this idea of the value in trade jobs and learning skills, and that so that some of the kids who aren't as interested necessarily in following the traditional academic approach have opportunities. And finally, environmental justice, which is a huge part, of my platform in talking about making monies and creating experiences that are available. One thing other people don't know in DC is we have a lot of parks, a lot of green spaces and opportunities for training and for jobs and for a greater appreciation of the environment. We've also got some chemical plants that are, pumping some unhealthy toxins into the area. And DC did used to be the largest majority Black city in the nation. We used to be at right around 76 to 80% Black. They used to call us the chocolate city back in the day. We're a little bit more mocha now. So, it's kind of like 46 to chocolate 50, city. But still, we still have one of the largest, African-American populations in the United States. And so environmental issue and justice issues, go along with, a lot of the communities here that some of the lower income wards have, bigger concerns regarding the environment. So those are my 5. There's of course there's more, but again, being in a position of statehood and being the actual representative that, that can bring these bills to the floor and vote for them, all that's contingent on statehood, right?
Yeah, Reverend Wendy, I wanted to piggyback off of what you said about like keeping these people accountable and not falling for some of the stuff they do, that they just keep doing this flagrant kind of like financial things in front of our faces, and we keep voting them in and in again. I wanted to add that, do you think that sometimes these people use the culture war as a smokescreen and a distraction, not all the time, but sometimes, for their own failures? Because there are a lot of economic injustices going on, and on both sides, I think the culture war is being used to distract from that. When you can get two people coming from the city and from a small town or a rural area and saying, hey, maybe our economics kind of both suck and we can both agree on these things, but these people want us to keep butting heads for no reason, you know?
Absolutely. I do believe that the culture wars are being exploited a lot of times, yes, to cover up your own shortcomings, but also because we're in a sort of reality show based instant gratification culture countrywide, that if there isn't drama, we don't pay attention, unfortunately. And so some people, I believe, are exploiting that. We have short attention spans. We go for the big shiny, thing, the distraction, the straw man, all of that, rather than being able to push by that. Like even right now with the conversation around the stimulus plan, and it's making me upset, but right now there's a possibility for us to get the $1,400 checks, right? That's what's on the table now, finally, after having told us for months it was going to be $2,000 checks. You can look back and you can see it. Joe Biden said $2,000 checks are on the table, Georgia. We need you to vote. So you're on tape saying these things, and now to come back and say, I'm getting you those $1,400 because it's going to go along with the $600 that I got you, and it's like, please don't. We just spent, in my opinion, 4 years getting gaslighted to the top. Just say, I know I said 2,000, but I'm not going to be able to do that because we, had to do some sort of compromise. But if you look at it, you did get 600. I'm gonna get you 14. So it ultimately adds up to 2,000. But don't stand in front of a camera and tell me that you didn't say what I know you said, because we just
be honest.
And if you're going to be different as an administration, you have to start off by not doing what the previous administration used to do, which was tell you not to believe what you were seeing in front of your eyes. There's a million people out here at this inauguration, not the 200,000. So
if you're going to be different. Like
emotional abuse.
My fear is that was Joe Biden's way of telling us, hi, I'm not better. I'm not better. That's that's my fear. What Joe Biden was telling us. We're in for 4 more years of the same level of gaslighting, just from the other side of the aisle.
when you order, let me just say, when you order something online, you get a tracking number that comes with your package. We need a tracking number that comes with politicians' promises. We need to see where it is on route. Like sometimes you look at your tracking number and you can see where the UPS car is or the Amazon thing is.
And where to put a tracking number. Right,
exactly.
And now it's in Indiana.
Right, exactly. So we need to say, this was your promise. We put a tracking number on that. And if it's not delivered, we want a refund. Now, what's the refund? You don't get another term. We won't listen to you anymore.
Right. Yeah. And that in a perfect world, that's how politics is supposed to work, right? That's we are supposed to be the ones that say, if you're not going to do what we sent you there to do, then we are going to, it's going to cost you your seat. But we haven't gotten ourselves to a place where we're effectively doing that. And therefore it gives them license in some way, to continue doing what they're doing, because they're not necessarily being held accountable.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you make 4 years is 4 years is a really long time, or 6 years, or for the senators. So it's really pretty long time. So they get 6 years, do whatever they want, and then last 1 year when they start campaigning back again, they start telling you, oh yeah, none of the things that you thought were happening actually happened, and here's what really happened. We're going to tell you the new truth.
Right,
but you have to vote for us because the other guy is so bad.
I posted this and I said, listen, I said, now, I mean, not being selfish, but it impacts me because I'm running for 2022, right? And so if Democrats don't follow through with what they said they were going to do, then it's going to impact us, right? Democrats are going to stay home. I can't go out there and run and say, hey, I'm going to continue on the good work of what's happening now. If everybody's like, no, but y'all got up in there and did the same thing that, you broke your promises just like, so I don't believe any of you all. So it's not just
that
about
short attention span you were talking about.
Yeah, it's not even just about Joe Biden.
The short attention span, we can't remember what all happened in the last 4 years even.
Yeah, you have to think about the bigger picture and how our words aren't just, don't just impact us, but how they impact, just the larger body politic in general.
4 years, say 4 hours. Some of you can't even do 4 hours.
Right. 4 hours. What did I eat for breakfast? I can't remember. But let me say hi to Harry, who just joined us. He's one of our more recent additions to the podcast.
Hi.
And Reverend Wendy might not have met him before. So,
no, did you want to say something, Harry? You look like you were trying to break in there. So did you have something you want to add?
I've been trying to participate and failing for the past 10-15 minutes. It's my fault for being so late, though. I had some other things come out that I wasn't able to make it earlier. But real quick, before I ask anything, I also want to say, according to the schedule, we were scheduled for 2 to 3. What time zone is that?
Eastern.
Is that Eastern?
Eastern time, but we got started a little bit late, so that's why I'm giving a few extra minutes because we got started about 15 minutes late. So it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, Reverend Wendy. When do you want to end our talk today so we can give you enough time to sign off? We want to give you at least 10 minutes to.
What kind of things I say probably depends on that.
Well, I'm enjoying talking to you guys. So 3:45.
Sounds good.
Oh wow!
All right, sounds good.
I'll give you a little bit extra time.
Thank goodness, because I didn't. There was a whole lot of.
So one of the things I want to ask was oh, sorry, go on.
No, just
saying.
You
go ahead, Harry.
There was a whole lot of interruptions, just like being on the debate stage.
Have you thought about maybe it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is how a lot of our political situation seems to be because citizens ourselves don't have enough power to hold politicians accountable in the first place. So maybe if we want to actually change things in the government, maybe we first have to get more power to the people first, then use that power to reform the government. So what? So will we
I think it's some of that, but I think it's also some of reminding people of the power that they have. And let me say this, if I can only speak for my own office, is one of the things I say, when I'm speaking on my stump speech, if you will, is that I expect you to hold me accountable. If I tell you I'm going to the Hill to do thus and so, and I'm not doing it, I'm going to make myself accessible to you. I'm going to be in the community, hosting town halls, talking with you all. And if I'm not doing what you want me to do, vote me out. You understand what I'm saying? That's the power that you have. And people don't always, remember that that's the power that they have. But that's also because politicians in particular have a tendency to get over here into Washington, not just DC, when I'm talking about from all over the country. And they forget about their constituents. They forget about the folks that they're supposed to be responsible to. Then they go back for, one little town hall and they get chewed out and they take that. But then they figure, well, I'll take the chewing out, but it's not going to go, much beyond that. But what we're seeing, friends, is that progressive young people are like, okay, if you're not going to do it, then move aside. I'm going to run. And I'm going to replace you, and I'm going to give the constituents an option and a choice. Yeah. And that's what I encourage. That's where our power is. Maybe maybe we can't vote them out. Vote somebody new in. Give them a challenger. Let them know that we're not just going to continue to stand by year after year and let you all just come in and gaslight us, tell us what you're going to do, and then go back and do the opposite.
And have you heard of the term?
The whole message of we're coming for your jobs, folks. We don't like the way you're doing it.
Have you guys ever heard of the term triangulation?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Okay.
I've heard it, not necessarily in the context of politics, but
psychological concept that you want to get at person C by using person B, right?
Mhm.
You triangulate. It's like, I'm not directly going to go at this person, but I'm going to use a group of people or my son or like a family member I have to do something and to say something about that other person. And I
It's
Third
just feel
party.
it's a
in
psychological
years,
tool, so I know it in the context
right?
of psychological. It's also like a subtweet. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
kind of like
You can apply it to just about anything in our
right,
lives, you know?
right,
years
right.
of being triangulated against each other instead of really just looking at the problems. We've had years and years of, it's like, we don't vote you people in so you can use us to attack one of your colleagues or to be used in these forever wars of like complaints and gripes that are not ours,
Mhm.
that are yours, but you're using
Right.
riling us up against the other side, but you're not bringing anything to the table. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So
That's
for
what I
me, I feel
love.
like that.
I
Go ahead,
love
Tay.
this. I love the policies that Reverend Wendy has brought to her table to say these are the things that will benefit us, even if we aren't even a state yet. I think you said some of these were contingent on statehood, but when I heard UBI,
Mhm.
I'm like, what's more universal than universal basic income? I mean,
Right.
your state,
Right.
everybody in your constituency is going to benefit if you get a UBI,
Right.
whether or not
Right.
you're a state.
Yeah.
Right. And so giving them that proposal and bringing that idea is what will hopefully stir folks then to come out to the polls and inspire them to say, okay, this is something that she will, stand for, advocate for, and stuff like that, that will make a direct, tangible difference in my life. And that's enough for me to get up out of my bed, because registration is not even the key. Most of our 8 wards have 60 to 70%. Folks are registered to vote. They just, when it comes time to actually go to the polls, they're not turning out. So one of the keys, my primary is June 22nd. June 8th, 2022. So we are organizing and strategizing. We're kind of getting my name out there and stuff now. Like I said, I'm running against a woman who's been in the office now for 30 years. So she's very well known.
Right after my birthday.
The district. But we are going to organize one of the most massive GOTV, get out the vote efforts this city has ever seen. Because at the end of the day, that's how we win. It is by getting voters to the polls and getting them to vote for me. So that's the strategy that we're going based on data. I mean, I am an acolyte of Andrew Yang, and so it's not just, I'm looking at the data as well. And let me just add this part in there too, folks. I am a reverend. You all know that. I'm a woman of faith. And I'm also seeing across the electorate that there is sort of a hopelessness and there's sort of an openness for moral leadership, for people that have character of conscience, like I was talking about earlier, that actually want to be held accountable. They understand the responsibility, the great responsibility of representing folks. And so what you're seeing, I think, is more openness to people of faith running for office. If you look at Reverend Warnock down in Georgia and how, he is a reverend in that, but people were very open to voting him in. I know that, from my own personal perspective, the right has tended to have sort of the corner on faith or religion or the interpretation thereof. And that is not the only interpretation of faith, Christianity or otherwise. And so for me, being a passionate, social justice loving, Jesus flipping over money tables and getting in people's faces type of Christian, there is room for us in standing up and fighting for the oppressed and fighting for the widow and looking out for the least of these and holding the Pharisees accountable. I'm not going to preach this morning, but I'm just saying there is room for that. There is an openness to that. And so sometimes running is also about timing.
And Wendy, I think you said okay, you said you're not preaching, but you are hitting my G spot right now. the good spot. I mean, you just got me all excited when you started going into you're talking about how Christianity is so much more than being judgy about, who you're going to have a partner or who you're going to have, in your family, or who you're going to, I mean, there's judgmental, and then there's the real Christianity where you support everybody, and that's what you're going to bring this back. You're going to bring back that moral force.
And John
Yes, I'm walking in the I'm walking in the footsteps of a Martin Luther King, and Dr. William Lord, why is his, oh my God, Barber, Dr. William Barber, Poor People's Campaign, folks like that, folks of stature who are genuinely concerned in humanity. I see that you have the Martin Luther King thing back there, poster behind you, Faye. You see it behind me too, right there. The spirit of folks like him and Maya Angelou and folks who just fought for justice. Justice is love in action. Justice is what love looks like in action. And so that's what I am endeavoring, not just to preach about, but to be about. And so that's what is motivating me to continue on in this campaign as well.
And I want to point out,
I want to take some response to that real quickly, because I think that's a really good idea. So speaking of action, how you said about how justice is love in action, I just thought of an idea about a few minutes ago or so about how politicians who want to give power back to the people could probably an idea that they could use to increase voter turnout a lot, which is to use their positions as their fame, their the fact that people know who they are because they're running for office, to promote ideas and strategies that regular people can use to improve their own lives and work together and get resources and get things they need in order to things like time banking, starting a time bank or joining a time bank, whether online or offline, things like volunteering your local food pantry, or things like setting up grassroots supply chains for things that people need.
Well, let me say this. I'm not a politician, and politicians, unfortunately, traditional politicians don't think like that. Yeah. Although I would say that they should. You kind of have to be that kind of person already in order to prioritize, establishing those kinds of connections. If that's not really in you to do, sometimes it then will come off as inauthentic. But if that is something, people can look across your track record and see that that's the kind of person that you have been, then it becomes, then it's something more people can rally around. With Andrew, again, I'll go back to him. When Andrew was talking about what he wants to do in uplifting communities and what he's seen, he was talking about having, he started Venture for America that went into Detroit and Baltimore and tried to create a program. So he's not just talking about something. He said he actually did something to try to address it. And that was what was endearing to folks. It was he's a regular politician. He's actually doing, already done what he's trying to
do. But that's not what I was talking about.
Politicians
is a wrong word to use, but that's not what I was talking about when I said the idea I was saying. What I was trying to say is that somebody who's well known enough to run for office, like you are, and being able to get the word out, get people to hear about that you're running for office. Someone in that position who's running for office could use that to not just tell people about what they're going to do to help them, but also to provide leadership and inspire people to action. And I don't just mean action in terms of advocacy for the campaign. I mean in terms of actual tangible action for improving their own lives. So if you can use your campaign to organize people on the ground, in ways that actually directly benefit, people who might vote for you, then they're going to come off you in droves. If you're actually organizing people to action that way, rather than just asking them to call people and convince them to vote for you, can show them that you can lead them in that way, and then they'll be more likely to vote for you.
So I hear what you're saying here. You're saying that if Reverend Wendy starts some actions that that people are experiencing their own lives, that they're already getting some benefit, even before she's talking, doing other making political change, then they're more likely to support her and continue to believe in her.
Raising the voters up, helping them raise themselves up, not just doing it, not just passing laws and stuff, but also not just doing things for people, but also providing leadership and inspiration to help communities to uplift themselves.
Right. And I agree with you 100%. And that's one of the things that I'm endeavoring to do. But one of the things, there's also a delicate balance in working with the numbers of organizations here in the city who are already doing that. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes there are partnerships that can be made so that as long as I'm genuinely coming in, because my thing is, I don't want to just jump into something because it's a nice political move. But that's why I'm partnering with these folks like UBI, because it goes along with who I already am as a person. And so I am helping them to champion people to empower themselves. And so you do have to be careful, because there are organizations out there doing that very thing, and you don't want to come off as if you're trying to take over or duplicate what they're already doing.
Right. So then the question is, are there any time banks or are there any time banks in Washington D.C. that you could partner with, or that you could encourage people to join as sort of a, you know what I mean?
I haven't. I do. Go ahead.
Harry is asking about time banking because he himself is very involved in a time bank where he is. Yeah. In Ohio, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, from my home state. Okay. where I was born.
Nice.
I would have to look more into that, Harry. That's not an issue that I've looked into right away, but I certainly, would be interested in getting more information and seeing if there are organizations here in DC who are currently doing that.
And Reverend Wendy,
I would also say, sorry, go on.
Just a sec, Harry, let me just see. What are you also doing to know that you're not just preaching to the choir, that you're reaching out to maybe people who are of a different political kind of view or something like that, but you know, because so sometimes when we're all in on agreement here, we're all Yang-gang, we all agree, but then what do we do to widen the tent, as they say, or get more have you been on the news junkets and stuff?
Have I been on the what? Junkets?
We have Spectrum local news here in LA, and I think different cities have the Spectrum local news. So how have you been able to spread your message so more people know about you and are listening to you?
Reach across the aisle.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm doing certainly is making myself available. I will talk to anybody. I will, media wise, mainly focusing on, local outlets, those that are getting in front of DC voters, because that's ultimately who's going to put me in office, right? Is the DC residents and DC voters. So any, newspaper platform or what have you that is willing to talk to me or interview me. And we have reached out, my communications team, we send out, media advisories and press releases. We send them out to everybody, to all of the local media and that. But I will also say that I personally, one of the first things I did, and especially around the statehood issue, and I haven't really shared this publicly, but, when I looked to see, well, what are the Republicans saying about, about statehood? Because to me, this is not a partisan issue. And it would make sense that we would get them in on the conversation as well. So I reached out to, some people don't believe it, but there actually are Republicans in DC proper. And so I did, reach out to, one of the local guys and just, who happens to be a Republican for statehood, and had a big, long conversation with him to let him know that I would be very much interested in continuing, a dialogue with him around making sure that his voice and voices like his were included in the conversations as we move forward. So that was one of the first things I did, because there are some things like UBI, like statehood, that transcend partisan politics to me. Yep. And they're, that are just human in nature. And so I feel like, where are those places where we can make the connections, talk to people? We don't have to talk about the things that we disagree with. Again, going back to Andrew, that was why he had so much pull from different because he was just talking about general things that appeal to everybody, not just, but he, without compromising his own personal beliefs as a Democrat, but he was just saying, but there are some things that transcend party that we ought to just be able to talk about from a general standpoint, because they impact all of us. And I feel like, statehood is one of those issues. And so that's one of the action steps I've already taken.
There's nothing ideological about whether or not DC should be a state.
We have a question from Twitch, and I would like to get that in real quick. Low Key Asian is asking, can DC become a state through a bill or the like? Like, what's the process like for becoming a state when you're DC?
process is getting it passed through the House of Representatives, which it passed last June by, like 243 to 198. I can't think. So it was passed in the House, and then you present it to the Senate, where it at this point would require 60 votes in order to pass, which would, with the current makeup of the Senate, require at least all 50 Democratic senators plus Kamala Harris making 51 if there was a need for a tiebreaker, and 10 Republican senators. At this present time, we only have 39 senators, Democrat or Republican. They're all Democrat who have signed on to the current bill as it is. Once it gets through Senate, then it goes to the floor for a vote. It gets passed by a Senate, and then it can become, signed into law as a bill. But right now, where it stands, it's going through the House again. So we have to do it again. So they're currently gathering signatures for it to do another vote in the House again. And then we'll turn to the Senate to see if the Senate will take it up, or how many votes we can get in the Senate, or is there a conversation around eliminating the filibuster so that it would only require 51 votes as opposed to 60.
All right.
I do want to.
Since our time with Reverend Wendy is coming to a close, I'd like to give Reverend Wendy a chance to give us some social media ways that we can, continue to be in contact with her, to get into touch with her campaign and assist her, or give a donation. Reverend Wendy, how do you want us, the listeners, to reach you?
Let me also say thank you again. I think somebody said it earlier, for this debate prep that you all put me into. Yeah. But it was in a good way, right? Trying to sort of navigate and get your voice in there, but also listen and hear and other people's experiences. So thank you for that.
Well, this is helpful. You gotta come back then. Keep your skills sharp.
Not healthy for me. It's not healthy for me, but great having you home. It's like,
but I know is where you're coming from, Izzy. You don't like the reality TV type stuff, and neither do I. But but when you're faced with it, it's good to know how to take it on, I think, is what Reverend Wendy is trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. And most of you all are affiliated with the Yang Gang. That's how you mostly know me. So you guys know that I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at RevWendy3 on Twitter. But then please do go to my website, RevWendyForCongress.com. That there you'll find my platform, ways to get involved. I've had so many people that signed up to volunteer, because some people say, well, I'm not in DC. What can I do? Well, I'm glad you asked, particularly those of you who are savvy with online communication. What's really helpful and been helpful is volunteers who have been spreading the word about me or my campaign on various DC-based social media sites. Like, I've seen people going on the Washington Post. It's like, yeah, but Reverend Wendy has a policy for, or things like that. So any kinds of outreach.
So
do. Go ahead. Hey, were you going to say something?
What was the other one I have? RevWendyForCongress.org. What was the other one?
.com.
No. And also the 4 is spelled out FOR. Rev Wendy FOR.
Congress.com. And so that's how you can support me. And of course, donations, friends. I'm someone who I'm working on that. I've always had a hard time asking for money. That's just been me. I was a single parent for a while, and I never wanted to come off as like a charity case and stuff like that. So I would never ask people, didn't want people to know what but we really do need donations. This is the most expensive media market, one of them in the country, to run ads in. I am running against an incumbent, who has much more money than I have. And so even, every $5 makes a difference. And so, getting folks to donate, and that there's a donation button on Rev Wendy for Congress would be helpful. But again, for those of you who are, have platforms like this, I appreciate it, because this gives me additional ways to talk to groups of people, large groups of people, all at the same time, and just share my heart. And today, I just hope that, I was able to explain and articulate for you all what is motivating me to run to be the DC delegate for 2022. I am running for DC. I love this city. I love what this city is capable of, and the potential that is here. And it would be, my great honor to be the representative that would carry us into that next future that I see for Washington, D.C.
And I
got the URL right. So it's REV Wendy FOR Congress.com.
That's
yes,
correct.
that is correct.
And I want to give everybody else a chance to invite Reverend Wendy to their podcasts and their live streams, because I know we're a podcast of podcasters and event runners, and so we all have our own different connections outside our own this particular group, and we should invite Reverend Wendy if she's has the chance, while she still has time to campaign with us and is not being run ragged in her own town.
The schedule is getting busier. Please, if you want to invite me onto your podcast, just send me a DM via Twitter. That's the best way, and then I can run it through my communications team, and we can see where we can get on. We've been on the trail almost 3 months now, so it's still kind of getting it's still new, and so we're still building up. But again, I want to make sure that I try to remember where I came from, like I said earlier, and stay connected to those who brought me, who knew me before anything that I did or accomplished, because that's what I'm about. I have to be a woman of my word. I can't preach about it and not be about it. So to the degree that I can, I want to model what it is I say that I am running to do and to be. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do my best.
Almost deaf.
Let me get Izzy to go first here, I think.
Sure.
Thank God. Yeah. So this gonna be my closing argument here, and I'm gonna also be claim my time since I've been interrupting and stuff. But anyways, first I would like to get back on like the real quickly on like what Rev mentioned about faith, and like how those with like morals and a conscience are those who represent the religious belief and stuff. And I feel that is like it has more truth and means more than like reciting scriptures from the Bible or going to church every day, because I'm sure the billionaires, they consider themselves to be devoted Christians or Catholics, and they do those things, but they do not have any morals, even though they may say they do in front of a camera. So it's like, like, and also like, when my friend she actually went to down in like at the Atlanta area, and and a neighbor almost killed her. And I'm sure like these same people would say like, oh, Black Lives Matter, and we're Christians and stuff, and it's like these are the same people who committed a sin, so but those who like who do have like a heart and a conscience, and they do the right thing, just because like just because they do care, and they don't try to remind you that they care, they just do it. Or I mean, that's what I consider to be like true like yang gang love and whatever, rather than like oh, be positive, be nice and stuff, or like or you have to like walk this way, talk this way, in order to be looked at stuff. And mind you, and this is the point I definitely want to make. Will you make
I know that you have a lot of wonderful things to say, but right now Reverend Wendy, so I'm wondering if you want to just give her a quick outgoing, and then we can continue this conversation with her another time.
Yeah, we need to do outros for everybody.
Yeah. I will. And so I'll say right off the bat, like my podcast is Izzyland Uncut. So yeah, I'll definitely be send you a DM, Wendy, because I feel like we we have a lot of things to discuss, and since we didn't really get to say much on here anyways, but yeah, my podcast is Izzyland Uncut. That's IZZYLAND Uncut. I have a YouTube channel at Izzyland YT, IZZYLAND YT. I'm also on Twitter at Izzy Bolden, IZZYBOLDEN, and Instagram. So like, and like if anybody else is like interested in becoming a guest, definitely, shoot me a DM on Twitter. And also, like, I'm also on TikTok at, Izzy, and even on Twitch, I believe both for like Izzy Reborn 92, IZZYREBORN 92. And yeah, it's like, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. And Reverend Wendy, anytime you need to hop off, go ahead. But I'm going to also pass to Ariel. She's also probably going to send you an invite.
Okay, yeah. So I have a YouTube channel called Revolutionary Thinking, and it's kind of it's exactly what Wendy is talking about. It's just like the revolution in the way we think and how we do things, and it naturally our leaders will just flow from that. And I just want to say, Wendy, I love the way you use the word articulate, and I love how you analyze and you get into the weeds, and it's not a soundbite thing. Just round pause. Okay, so you can find me on Twitter. It's at Ariel's Ariels. That's ARIELS AERIALS. And same thing on Instagram, Ariel's Ariels. And I have a link tree. It's Ariel 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is, if I'm not following you, or if you are following me and I haven't followed you back, just let me know. Send me an email if you want, revwendy3@gmail.com, and I will follow you so that you can leave me a private message with all of these addresses. Because I told y'all I'm old. There's no way I'm going to remember all of these. But if you can just send me a DM, a private message with all of your contact, your social media contact information, that would probably be better for me, because that way I can go back and reference it all, make sure I don't miss anybody. Okay, so I think most of you all I am following on Twitter, but if I am not, please go ahead and follow me, and I'll follow you back.
I think you're following me.
It's revwendy3@gmail.com, right? That's what you said?
Yes, revwendy3@gmail. That's
cool. Everyone who wants to give you contact information, pull it onto one email, make it easier.
You can do that too, but I'm just saying I'm mostly active on Twitter. We do have because I'm gonna have to go, but we do have a congressional race Facebook page. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. So there's multiple places where the campaign is reflected. But in terms of me personally, I still operate the Twitter account, and so what I can do is get your information. If you DM it to me, get it over to my communications team who handles my schedule, and then we can go from there in terms of setting up. Because I'd love to come on as many of your programs as I possibly can. Because like I said, I never forget where I came from. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you all for this time.
Respect.
I've enjoyed you. Spread the word for me. And give me $5. Okay. No,
before you go, thank you so much. Really appreciate. I wish I could talk to you more personally, but everybody else has got to talk to you. I'd love to have you back on as sometime very soon, if possible. But please, either you yourself or people who work for your campaign, come on periodically. Share the links where you'd like us to promote your information on our Discord. This is a persistent site. We are a collective action political network, among other things. So please put that in our live stream chat or our social chat. Either one, doesn't matter. We'll go there and we will boost those articles and we'll comment, whatever.
Thank you.
Yes,
Reverend
thank you so
Wendy,
much.
I want to ask one question, please, before you go, Wendy. What is the icon that you're going to be using for Twitter? Heidi had
it's an owl.
It's an owl?
Nice.
Owls.
It's an owl because Yang picked that because they said owls are wise. And they felt like wisdom was represented in the owl. And so the owl is my Twitter emoji. So yes, owls up. But I also kind of made my own little acronym from it and said OWL, operate with love. And that's also the way that I intend to operate my campaign. So,
with love. Wow.
thank you all so much.
Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much
Take
for
care.
coming by. Bye-bye.
All right.
Refluence.
Great guest.
You didn't say much.
Okay. So I guess let's finish up our closing.
But that's cool.
Okay. My name is Fei Ku, and you can find me on Facebook And I am definitely going to, ask Wendy if she'll come to the Yanggang Report Live at some point, and so I can continue having conversations with her for everybody. How about you, Refluence? Would you like to give a social media?
Yes. You can Google me, Refluence, REFLUENC, and I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Jeb Corvin Relota. I'm on Twitch, so twitch.tv/Refluence, REFLUENC, and everything's mostly on my Instagram. My Facebook, you can DM me or whatever you want, and friend me, and yeah. Thank you guys.
All right. How about you, Kai? Are you ready?
Hi, I'm Kai McCoy, and I am recently from Kansas City, now in Indianapolis. And so I can be found on Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal me, as well as Cash App, because I'm trying to kind of increase our monthly income just kind of by crowdsourcing our own UBI. And that is at KAIZENKC.
Okay, thank you. And Mia?
Hi, I am at Mia Songbird on Twitter. There is a link in my Twitter to my Patreon if you want to support me. I am not active on my Patreon, but I am active on my Twitter. So follow me there for content, not on the Patreon. But please give me money anyways. That being said, I do Humanity Hangs Tuesdays and Fridays, and I am the co-lead with that. I am working with Boyce on The Low, so check out The Low for daily news. Well, semi-daily right now, but we're going to be ramping it up over time. But it is active and going and awesome, so check that out. And last but not least, what the heck else? Oh, I don't know. I forgot.
We've got Harry first. Oh, I thought you were going to
I
pass.
sourced a few people who are here. Izzy was one of my finds.
Cool.
Harry's one.
Well, I've been on the show like twice now before now, actually, because like the last time was a social stream, and then the other time was like the first time.
Yeah,
so
there's
there's
some good talk between you and Ariel on that social stream. So
yeah, it
glad
was
that we
fun. Yeah,
recorded that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I'll
really
put,
fun.
Yeah,
I'll
Harry-
clean it up and put it on Spotify with all the silence truncated, and there'll be a nice little episode there.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, so
Okay,
my
I'm
name's
really
Eric.
happy to be a good fit for you, Harry. I'm glad to see you coming back and having conversations. We are a collective of people who just want to fix the world, and that's going to take more than one person's perspective. That's going to take more than one person's ideas.
For
and
sure.
with that said, I
think
am
it's-
going to
Sorry,
sign
I
out.
think it's yes. Goodbye.
I was gonna say I'm on
And
Facebook and Twitter.
Harry's
I
turn?
think
Yeah,
I think it's saving the world now. We gotta save the world now.
yeah,
right.
my name is Harry
Yeah.
Hirsch. You can find me on Twitter as Reenter. So it's Reenter user and Harry Hirsch on Facebook. So
Re-enter username.
Cool.
yes.
Re-enter. I like that.
And-
Is
okay.
that your daughter, Kai?
What?
Oh, Kaizen. I think she's with her daughter or something. Hi.
That's
Hi.
this is my oldest. This is Grace.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
So
Hi.
Video's a little frozen for me at the moment, but
yes.
Shale, are you ready to take us out?
Sure.
Okay.
Did Refluence go?
He's still here.
Oh, he went.
I see him.
I think.
Did you do your sign off? Okay.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had a chance.
My name is
Refluence is-
Shale Riley, and my Twitter is Shale Riley. SHAEL RILEY. That's where you can find me. Thank you for watching. This is a good show. Good night. Goodbye, everybody. This was great. See you guys next week.